Hey there, it's author and attorney Kelly O'Connell and from Knockout Radio, and today we're discussing the strange phenomenon of Joe Biden, who's combining dementia with the most audacious and tyrannical overtake of government since Vladimir Lenin. And the article that I'm sending in tomorrow to Canada Free Press, Biden and Dems attack on the elements of democracy, cancels the Constitution, and America must stand against Biden's tyranny or liberty's lamp will be extinguished. So what's going on right now in the Afghanistan city of Kabul and in the entire country is surreal. If you have been living under a rock, America decided that it was going to leave. Joe Biden decided he was going to leave, and he chose a date. He didn't prepare for it. And so they didn't attempt to get Americans and our allies out. They believe there's 40,000 Americans staying there. Our allies are starting to be picked off one by one and murdered by the Taliban. Meanwhile, we're trusting the Taliban to get Americans to the airport. It's the Kabul airport with one runway. While we had Bagram Airport, it was military, and I think it had 4 runways, but we shut that down. Biden claims that we have to get out by the 31st so we can celebrate 9/11. It's crazy. Nobody supports this. Our allies are in fury, and Biden acts like because he's the president, he can make any decision he wants. And nobody so far stood up to him. So it's very frustrating, it's very alarming, and it's harming our place in the world, but it is consistent with the Democrat theory that when they have the presidency, as Barack Obama said, I won. In other words, all arguments with me are over because I won. So it's just, it's very disheartening, and I don't know if the GOP is lacking the talent or the leadership, or they believe that there's nothing that we can do about it, but it's surreal, to be totally honest. Now, anyway, here's the article. Biden is who I call Pinata-in-Chief because he's not even aware of what's going on around him. He's being given talking points, but he's sticking to them. And he can think just enough to be able to stand up and push people off, but he's constantly contradicted by his own people, which suggests that he's incompetent. Nobody right now on the left is talking about getting rid of him, but even people like Schiff, Representative Schiff, is saying we can't get out by the 31st. It's not possible. So even a weird traitorous guy like Schiff is standing up against Biden. It's odd, and nobody's really behind him. But you know that Nancy Pelosi is, and Schumer, and all of the rest of AOC and everything. So who knows what's going to happen? Now, in a wildly shocking revelation, Democrats and their Pinata-in-Chief Joe Biden launched an experiment in anti-representative government, the keystone to the American experiment in creating a country and a democracy. Now, there's several things to unravel here I'd like you to think about, guys and girls. First, Dems are inaugurating the advent of the Liberal Tyrant who does whatever he wants and is under no declaration, Constitution, or Bill of Rights, America's founding documents. So even when the Supreme Court tells the Biden administration not to do something, they go ahead and do it anyway, and nobody can stop them. Second, the Dems are trying to inure and shock Americans by their absolutely reckless, illogical, and dangerous policy decisions to further break down America's spirit of liberty. What they're putting out there is this idea that the federal government holds all the cards, that the Constitution is just a piece of paper, and that because Biden is the head of that government, he can do anything he wants and nobody can stop him. So it's creating a constitutional crisis. Now, Biden's lawless reign. Consider how Biden shut down the Trump directives on the border, stay in Mexico, and all the other ones that he had, while inviting millions across the border. So now, while demanding children wear masks in school, Biden is simultaneously inviting hundreds of thousands of COVID sufferers in, but not testing them or vaccinating them. These people will get tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, or possibly millions of Americans sick with COVID, which, because of this cognitive dissonance that the Democrats enjoy, they enjoy trying to break people's brains, infuriate them, push them back, knock them down. So it's just awful. And these people who are coming across the border with COVID, and the sheriffs at the border think it's 50%. So if they brought 2.5 million people in this month, which I think is quite possible, especially as it gets a little bit cooler. I think we brought in, I say 2.5 million, 250,000 is what I meant. But if we bring in another 250,000 this month, it's 500,000 right there. Now, 50% of them have COVID. That's 250,000 people that have been immediately shipped off across the United States. And so they're going to be getting people sick across the nation. So, of course, COVID is going to spike. So, Biden doesn't consider himself under the Constitution, therefore he's lawless. Now, why are the Democrats doing this? They're doing it to break the nation so that the left can pick up the pieces and push us into international leftism, world utopianism. Now, in his reckless, demented leadership, Biden has repeatedly made decisions against common sense, defying American citizen disapproval, like on the border. Most astounding, though, is the currently ongoing departure from Afghanistan, in which he's made no common sense decisions. He refuses to take responsibility for it. He says the buck stops here and then blames Trump and everybody else. And it's just, it's just so frustrating. It's like we're losing our country. And if you've ever seen a socialist state, you understand that what we're trading down so that this group of people, Nancy Pelosi, Biden, and all these other Marxists, can have power. So most people want us to blow the Taliban to smithereens. And so under what used to be American exceptionalism and a default position, we would go in, we would secure Kabul. It's not that big of a town. We'd bring in 20 or 30,000 troops. Then we would start picking off the Taliban, and the Taliban are the gatekeepers at the airport. So they're making it very difficult, if not impossible, to get to the airport. And they've got many, tens of thousands of people who are standing in an open sewer next to the airport waiting to show their paperwork to these Taliban people. So the Taliban is heartless, it's reckless, it's murderous, it's Sharia-driven. And that's the people that Joe Biden willingly gave Americans to protect. So why did he do this? Why is the left doing this? It's on purpose, obviously, because it was all by choice. And they're doing it to break our spirit, to break our heart, to show us that we're nobody special in the world community, to break international relationships, to break promises. And the UK actually got up and chastised us in their parliament. Now, by not telling NATO what was going on, even though the Democrats have always lectured us on how important NATO is, what they've done is they've left, think about this, British citizens, French citizens, Australian citizens, and Army. These are all Army people and also citizens who came in to work there. And this is all being forced on us by a small rebel army, ragtag, who now have a lot of great weapons because of us. So Joe is making decisions and not checking for the will of the people. He's making bad decisions and he doesn't care who's opposed to it. Now his CIA leader went to meet with the Taliban, and they had a meeting and didn't bring the information to the Congress. So the point that I'm trying to make today is we're in a republic. A republic is driven off of democracy. It's driven by transparency. Everything is transparent. The people decide who's going to be elected. The people decide whether the actions of the government are acceptable. Now Biden is hiding stuff, not just from his allies, but from us, the people. And with Joe Biden in there, it's turned into a political coup. So our theory of government is the result of thousands of years of European evolution. Representative political theory derives in part from the 14th century papal conciliar crisis, where they fought against the false pope and decided the pope didn't have authority, but the cardinals had the authority. And the cardinals represented the rest of the church. And so the pope really represented the common everyday Catholic. And the same thing is true for us, is our representatives serve us. They're here to do our will. They're here to protect us. And so the Biden administration has inverted this because that's how Marxism is done. There's a very thin leadership at top. There's a military, and everybody else is a slob fighting to survive. So we also got our political theory on representative sovereignty from the English Civil War, the American Revolution, and many other sources. And I would tell you to look at Edmund S. Morgan's Inventing the People, The Rise of Popular Sovereignty in England and America. And so there is no democracy without republicanism, because without republicanism, democracy is just mob rule. Now, republicanism diffuses power and enforces the rule of law so that everybody's treated equally. Republicanism itself rests upon popular sovereignty informed by transparency in all government details. So now go look at this, look this up. Joe Biden laughs off questions about Americans trapped in Afghanistan. White House cuts off audio. So you've got a demented guy who has not one iota of sympathy. I was just informed on one of these YouTube videos that Joe Biden hates the military, and this is his chance to pay him back. Didn't serve in the military, of course, or he wouldn't hate it. He's laughing at these poor people that are trapped over there. And they said one Western woman came up to try to get in the airport, and the Taliban knocked her teeth out. They have no sympathy for women. The way Biden is headed now, our very form of government will soon be extinguished unless patriots across America stand up and demand Biden's ouster and replace him with truly virtuous folks who assume leadership to serve the people. So that's my story. I'm sticking with it. Hope you're doing well, by the way. And what can we do? Okay, so let me ask you this question. If you were put into Joe Biden's position, what would you do? You probably thought about this. Does it have to be this bad? For me, what I would do is, number one, I would halt all of the orders to leave. Number one. Number two, I would get together with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and I would say I need 20 or 30,000 soldiers over there pronto. Send them over. I would take over Kabul. I'd meet with the Taliban leadership and say, pull your people out of here or we're going to kill them all. And then just start killing Taliban. Set up Bagram Airport to fly out Americans back home and our allies. Do a background check so that we're not getting Taliban people sent back here to infiltrate. And that's that easy. Joe Biden doesn't want to do it. Why? Because he doesn't understand leadership. Leadership is to serve the people. Is Joe Biden serving the people? No. Who's he serving? The Democratic Party. They're trying to destroy our form of government by doing things outside of the popular will. He's no different than a king, a crazy King George, or Louis XIV, or whatever. doing things to please himself. He is a person without the tiniest shred of sympathy for others. And to quote the famous poet Yeats, a face as blank and pitiless as the sun. From and actually that would be a good poem to read right now. Let's see if I can remember it. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. I'm also Googling here to try to find it when I forget. The blood-dim tide is loosed. All right, let me start this over from... I remember it, but I want to make sure I just give it to you in one devastating shot. One of the greatest poems ever written, William Butler Yeats, who was from Ireland, and I've actually been to his church, and I've been to his house where he used to live in a castle on the west coast. The Second Coming by William Butler Yeats. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dim tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming, hardly are those words out when a vast image out of spiritus mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it reel shadows of the indignant desert birds. Then darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle, and what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. Matter of fact, I'm going to stick this in this essay that I just did. Whew. Man, it really takes the energy out of you when you think you have to talk about this crap all day long. Very sad. Well, let me get to some weird news, guys. Very, very bizarre news. And here's one. Man dies after having sex using epoxy adhesive instead of a condom. He thought he'd make his own condom, and it reminds me of that lady who put the fake hair on her head, and she ran out of hair adhesive, and she put on Gorilla Glue, and it's a real testimony to Gorilla Glue, because the surgeon had to volunteer and come in and cut it off of her head, and then she wanted to sue Gorilla Glue. So anyway, August 25th, it's in India. A lot of bizarre things happen in India. Police probing bizarre case of 25-year-old Indian man who suddenly died after using a high-powered epoxy resin instead of a condom before having sex. They used the adhesive to avoid pregnancy. A local investigator told Times of India of the prophylactic fiasco, which occurred June 22 at a hotel in Ahmedabad, Gujarat. According to senior police there, Salman Mirza of Fatehwadi and his unnamed fiancée were captured on closed-circuit television security footage entering the fatal flop house in the Juhapura neighborhood of the same city. Several witnesses said that Mirza, along with his former fiancée, both of whom were addicted to drugs, had gone to a hotel there. A senior police official told the local media. There they applied epoxy adhesive to his private parts as they were not carrying any protection. Aw, too bad. In addition to sealing off Mirza's manhood, the couple also mixed the epoxy whitener and inhaled the mixture for a kick. That's why he died. He was huffing. The Lovebirds' acquaintances told an official the doomed duo were intoxicated from the chemical cocktail during their ill-fated hookup. The following day, Mirza's acquaintance Firaz Sheikh discovered the guy lying in the bushes at the apartment complex and took him home. And then the police indicated that Mirza died of multiple organ failure caused by MacGyver-style contraceptive. And I think it's because he was huffing. But anyway, unfortunately, he was the only breadwinner in his family, and they have now lost him. Oh, okay. Here's another one. Very similar man hospitalized after wife puts chastity nut on his male organ, his penis, while he slept. And if you go to the New York Post and look up chastity nut and New York Post, you'll find it in a heartbeat. Ukraine man woke to find his wife had placed a metal chastity nut on his penis while he slept to stop him from having affairs. So he had to go get a saw. Unnamed man in his 40s knew something was awry when he woke in pain and spied the improvised abstinent device constricting his member, causing it to swell. The metal nut was placed there by his wife when she found out he slept around as his hobby. So they took him to the hospital in Zaporizhzhia, and they didn't have the proper tools, so they enlisted a local Cobra rescue crew to cut the choker off the anesthetized patient with a bandsaw. And in this video, you'll see the sparks flying as they cut this thing off, and it's a really big nut. And so they had to pour water on the guy's groin to cool him down from the heat from the nut and all the sparks. Now, they saved his penis, and the unfaithful husband is expected to regain full function of his organ, but now he's thinking of getting a divorce, and the police say that this isn't the first time they've been called to perform such a nutty procedure. And, quote, they often face similar incidents, are quite trained in removing rings, handcuffs, and other objects of people's bodies. Anyway, there's your weird news, folks. Say a prayer. This country is going down right now, and I don't think the Republicans really have what it takes to stand up to these crazy people. When you're dealing with people that are unethical, it's one thing. When you're dealing with somebody who's power hungry, that's slightly different. When you're having to work with people that are crazy or demented, that adds another layer. When you're putting all of these together, it's a perfect storm to destroy America. So anyway, Kelly O'Connell, please add me. Please give me a thumbs up. Let's get this channel moving so we can get these stories out there. Let's challenge the people on the left. I'll tell you one more story. I've contacted a couple of my friends. One of my friends called me to challenge me, as he always does, about Trump, even though I'm not Trump's spokesman. And I did support Trump in office, but I don't know what he's going to do now. I think he's going to run for office again. But he always sent me articles to confront me about how terrible Trump was. So I turned it around to him. I texted him, are you finally going to drop out of the Democrat Party? What Biden is doing to Afghanistan Americans and citizens, civilians, residents there is so cruel. It's unbelievable. You won't ever criticize your own party. Notice that the Democrats never criticize their own party. The fact that the media and the allies of the president, other politicians, and media organs and anchors, journalists are confronting Biden is because what he's doing is so horrific. It's incredible. It's horrible. It's evil. Well, another friend of mine who was mad at me because I was getting infuriated by Biden, and I guess I sent too spicy of a text to him. I texted him back and I said, I believe someday after Afghanistan, you're going to apologize to me, because what they're doing there is they're using it to further socialism. They have to be, because think about it, there's no logical reason to leave Americans in there before you take out the army. I mean, so they're building up their kingdom at the expense of the rest of us. And so what I say to you is the same thing I do to these guys, and they didn't really react to me. They haven't responded to me. I challenge you to go up to your liberal friends, anybody who used to torment you about Trump, and say, listen, Trump is an angel compared to this devil, Joe Biden. You've got to oppose him. I challenge you to contact your Congress people, your senators, and tell them that you want them to help Americans out of Afghanistan, and tell them you're leaving the party, and leave the party. This party has no more good in it. Kelly O'Connell, thanks a lot. Have a great day. God bless. Talk to you later. Knockout Radio. Ciao.